So quite often we would just, you know, without any script, have this video going, and we just had a basic of the script, an idea of what we wanted to see more of our past, and some of these past would come in when we put those warlike costumes on. Whether you were a Roman soldier, you helped oppose the mission of Jesus, whatever it was, the ability to be healed from that past life negativity that will haunt you from life to life is canceled out when you know these beautiful principles of Unarius.
You know, I just want to say something for a minute too. For some of you, I don't know how many of you know much about reincarnation or accept it as something that might be a truth for you, or you just think it sounds totally crazy. But I just want to mention that reincarnation as an idea has existed throughout time in almost every culture and society. So like, you know, our European ancestors in Scandinavia, in like the Celtic culture in Ireland, the natives in Norway and Germany, those in Gaul. So many people beyond the Hindus have accepted reincarnation as a fact for, you know, for millennia.
In China.
Yeah, and in China too. And for some reason, it's not a big thing in America. It seems to be increasing a little bit right now. It was kind of big in the late 70s, right? Like the mid 70s or the late 70s, there was that movie that came out, The Reincarnation of Peter Proud, right? And there was kind of a rise when the New Age movement was really gaining steam, you know. But it's a fundamental idea that many great thinkers, Pythagoras, you know, accepted as fact. So it's interesting that you guys sort of took that idea on and made these films about it in a very contemporary way. Yeah.
I'm very curious because just on a practical level, the scripting of these films, you know, because you're each channeling or experiencing these past lives, but at the same time you had to have a shot list and plan, not knowing necessarily what each of you were going to say every day. So how was the overall plan of the shoot laid out? Did you guys have a pre-discussion of what had happened? Or was there somebody who was sort of taking a leadership position about that?
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of like, I'm trying to get a clear, almost I'm trying to regress us all so we can sort of see the scene and how it happened step by step. So
I got to add this because it's very important.
Please.
It's a really important aspect of the
This
whole.
is Kevin.
Hi. And getting right to your question, because this is such an important aspect of what Uriel did for us as students, and getting back to how these things were staged, is she would say, you know, possibly, okay, we're in this cycle, folks, it's time to look at this. But it was up to us to figure out what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, how the sets were done. And she was very strong in not telling anybody, you're going to do this, now you're going to do this, now you're going to do this, because the whole purpose was for each one of us to engage our consciousness in this whole process. So as Dennis, who did much of the videoing for, and the set development for Lemuria, as Dave was talking about, some of the other psychodramas that you'll see throughout the weekend, whether it was a psychodrama or The Truth About Mars or whatever, and I did as well, she would just say, okay, here you go, kids. You got the cameras, you got the tape, now it's up to you.
You got the karma.
Yeah, exactly, you got the karma, it's up to you. And so many times going into these situations and these filmings, you would have an idea in your head what you wanted to do, and then as you got into it, it would grow on its own. And you would end up doing things you didn't think about or wouldn't believe you could do. Quite frankly, you know, when I first got into Unarius, there's no way I could stand in front of a group of people this big and talk. So, and honestly, all of us were the same way. And she just said, you're all going to do video, you're all going to get involved, and, you know, here you go. And it was amazing.
So this is going very, thank you so much, because you're kind of going directly, you are really directly answering my question, which is, where do you go from this kind of broader psychodrama exploration of yourself to shot lists, or like, we're going to make a set, or who's going to paint this, or, you know, like, I mean, anybody who's been near a set, you know, there's a lot of complicated things going on there. And there's got, you know,
Now, Uriel would come down to the center with the ladies especially and get the costumes going and building the costumes. She would inspire.
But how would you even know what was going to happen the next day? Did you just start? Did you know how long the pieces were going to be? Like when you made something like The Arrival, which you guys could come tomorrow, and it's incredible.
Because the sets are
It's a
pretty
60-minute story.
elaborate, right? I mean, like some of the
And there's
sets.
story curves. And,
Yeah. Oh, here's Dennis.
Okay. Here's what happened. As was said, Uriel set things in motion, but it really was important for us to find ourselves and find what we needed to work out. A lot of the time the sets were just like the moment of inspiration. Oh, we have this. We had like little props, and it would just come together, but it was also part of the reliving. When we did the scenes with the controlling people, it was like a tremendous weight and just like a heavy feeling as we're going through it, as we're creating the sets, because in a way we were recreating the very negation and the very technology that we were trying to portray on film, but now with a positive bias. And that was the working out. And there was like one time after another where you were just falling apart emotionally with the weight and the guilt, but the pushing through and the filming of it. Sometimes it was just a logical progression of the story, and the sets would come for that. Oh, we knew we had to have a scene where people were being programmed, you know, with the thing, and that would just be created in a day. We would shoot it, and we would move on. And it was always an evolution, you know, and an overcoming. Every one of us was just at times frozen with these emotions, but we persevered, and we had the encouragement and the deflations, constant deflations. I mean, I came out of a, you know, film school, you know, Mr. Big Ego, Mr. Media, blah, blah, blah. And that got whittled down, you know, quite rapidly. So I learned to do it in service, in exposing these parts of ourselves. There was another part of your question.
Well, if I can indulge one last, I guess, practical one. I was sort of asking how you said where it's going, but also, I think sometimes these very basic practical questions actually clearly open up a lot of interesting issues. Like, okay, this is all a truth that you've all.
Thank you. This is a truth that you guys have all channeled together, and you've all discovered together. But okay, you're editing. You have to decide what stays and what goes. What is, you know? Do you just leave everything in? Is that why public access was good for length? Do you all have to watch the dailies together and grouply decide that this is not?
No, that was left to us. It was basically storytelling. You know, here's the story. How do you tell it best? Where do you cut? I mean, the basic film techniques.
Do you all
try
have to agree?
No.
No. A lot of it was left to a couple of us that were in the video lab. And if we were off base, and sometimes we were, we'd hear about it. Oh, that's a terrible video. You know, it's like, oh, you know, you're just like, you know, that's a negative force. And it's like, no, Uriel.
That's a bad review.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and the whole thing is, if you didn't deflate yourself, you would get the deflation. It was all about whittling down that ego and being a channel in the way that you can, and being inspired, being aware that these higher beings inspire you, you know, knowing that, you know, great dramatic minds could inspire you. I can remember like playing with all, you know, that wonderful chroma key, you know, and sometimes like it's like a dance, you know, it's like you're up in the lab by yourself, but you're playing with it. It's like, you know, performance.
Wow.
You're in tune. You're working your way through it, or you're not, and you know you're stumbling through it. But either way, you come out the other side a better person and more aware, and you end up with, you know, something that you can share with others. That this is what we went through, and you work out with fellow students. Because when we set up, as I said, when we set up these sets and such, you know, and I'm like, hey, come on, everybody, come on up and be a robot. Right, and everybody's like working out those kinds of things. So it was, you know, we had a built-in cast of people who wanted to overcome and were relative to these cycles. So they would, you know.
It was extremely collaborative.
I was going to say, she really taught you guys how to work
Yeah.
as a collective, which for like filmmakers and creative people, you know, for a lot of creative collectives, you know, in the 60s and 70s, they fell apart because of egos, but it seems like you guys really found a way to do it based on philosophies.
It was because of the science that we were studying and trying to apply, which is all about being of service. and working out emotions that you're going through. So you want to be of service, you want to give of self. So it was extremely collaborative, and it was very, everything was of the moment. And I cannot stress that enough. We would go and you'd have the set, you know, Dennis would put a set together. I would help put the set together. You'd walk in and you'd start doing it, and somebody would say, well, no, I think we need to do this. And so it was that constant evolvement as the thing progressed. So it was really, and then you look back on it later, and quite frankly, Dennis did so much of the editing upstairs, and because he was and is a storyteller, that's what made some of these things watchable, quite frankly. And some of you could say, oh my God. But the thing is that no matter how they turned out, we were engaged in trying to discover who we really were and change ourselves for the better. And so, you know, as groaning as some of them are now, me looking back on, I also look back with a lot of love, because I grew so much and appreciated so much that opportunity that I had.
Don't forget, one thing is that the editors, like Dennis and other video editors, were overshadowed
Yes, absolutely.
and influenced and inspired intuitively, clairvoyantly by the higher spiritual brothers to do things, to do special effects. And they may not have known consciously what they were doing and turning this knob or whatever, but the end result came out beautifully.
It's the
inspiring.
feeling. The feeling was right. You know, you move into a shot and go, okay, that works.
By the way, if you're interested in learning that technique, come to the workshop on Sunday, right? Creative
Absolutely.
clairvoyance. You guys will sort of teach people how to tune into their own higher selves and also be able to open yourself to the Space Brothers or whoever is around, right? Yeah.
So when you guys watched the finished product together, was that in itself a sort of a part of the psychotherapy, or was it celebratory? I know you guys have a love of pageantry and ritual a lot of the time, and some of you guys love to put shows on for each other. Or what was it like to actually, like, was there a big assembly day? What was the screening day like?
By that time, it's
Yeah, I mean, it was like a little mini premiere. There were, you know, maybe 60 of us at the time in the classroom. And we'd have a video, and it was always like, okay, how's this gonna go? You know, that nervous thing of any little mini premiere, but there was, you know, the overcoming and the emotions and your own psychic was involved, because in showing it, to address your question, in the showing of it, something was worked out. In showing this tonight, I mean, it's kind of funny, I kind of grew into the gray hair, but it was like, because I was 28 then.
Oh, by the way, we should identify you. You were the bearded philosopher,
The bearded
right?
philosopher.
Looking out for you.
But you know, I'm in my early 60s now. I was 28 when that was, you know, a little while ago. But the point is that even showing the tapes, showing the final program was a tremendous healing, you know, for all of us. To see, to have yourself objectified on that screen and say, wow, that was really me, you know, that was like, yeah, that was real.
It's wild. It's wild too, because it seems like even if people can't get on board, like even if they're like, oh my gosh, these people were tuning into these imaginary lifetimes or whatever, it seems like whether it was, you know, whatever it was that you were doing seemed to really work. Like you guys have been doing this for 35 years. I mean, do you feel like you've grown a lot through this work over the years, that it's like really helped a lot?
Can you talk a little bit more about, well, first, last thing about the filmmaking, I guess, is all those kind of great effects, the cosmic generated dress, you know, with all the lights running through it. Who was building that? Where was that coming from? Or just the star fields and you mentioned the solarization?
Yeah, there was a lot of students worked on that.
I mean, even though these
Did
are...
you do that,
these are-
Jennifer?
Yeah, I remember painting some of the planets, and that was, you know, and Uriel loved that dress. That dress meant so much to her. It meant so much to her to have it finished, because it was the connection between all of these planets with the 32 other planets, and it was the Interplanetary Confederation, and she would just come down and, you know, be on us as to why isn't this getting done? Well, it was the blocks from our past why it wasn't getting done. It needed a lot of sewing, it took just hours of working, so there were many, many people that worked on it. But I have to say, I just always know how much that she just poured her love into that dress. That meant
She's
so
a
much to her.
taskmaster too, though. Huh?
She's a what?
A taskmaster. It sounds like a little bit like she
Of love.
She had
Of Celeste.
Tell us a little bit more about.
I think I can comment to that. With someone like Uriel, who's a visionary, she already sees it done. So maybe it was, gosh, I already see it, it's already done on the inner, why hasn't it manifested here?
Can you tell us a little bit more about what it's just Uriel as a presence day to day? Like, I wanted to hear earlier your stories of the, you talked about what it was like to work with her, but also just the first time meeting her. What, like, if you walked into the center, what was your, okay.
When I first came to the center, I think it was in 1987, and I was kind of going through a really rough time in my life, really searching for some answers. And when I started coming to the classes and then studying, I felt this tremendous peace of mind and could be centered enough to start to get above those emotions, to start to see some answers of what I need to do to make changes in my life. But I also wrote a letter to her to ask some help. And she said, well, if you stick around, I'm coming down for the celebration in a few months. And that was the only contact I had with her for months. And I came to that celebration months later, and she walked in, before she walked into the room, and I was not, I didn't think at that time, so sensitive or psychic. She was in the back, and before she walked into the room, I could just feel this tremendous power beam. Almost made me want to start crying. And when she walked into the room, literally there were like beams of light out her eyes, because she's so connected to that higher self of Uriel on the inner, which is a very high advanced consciousness, that radiated from her. And then she asked if I was there and said, can you come up front? And she wanted to do what's called polarize, to talk to me, touch me, and it was really to help me to make that more interconnection and to help me to open up more my third eye. But I'll never forget that. That was just I never experienced anything like it. It was overwhelming. It was absolute proof that this is not just an ordinary person. She definitely is overshadowed by this higher consciousness.
How much time did you guys all spend together, typically in a week? Or with her?
The class, with Uriel?
The 3 classes a week, and then...
Well, she came to the classes for quite a while and was involved in the filming, and then later on, and that was about the time when Celeste and I started coming to classes in the late 80s, she really felt that it was up to the students to become more inner-directed, so she really didn't come to the classes. We didn't see her physical presence as much as she would come for celebrations and if there was a special need. And I can share my story because this was very wonderful of how I experienced Uriel. The first class that I went to, I walked into the middle of what's called a major reliving class psychodrama with one of the students who was Uriel's Stefan Jankowski, Arison, who she worked very closely with. Well, he got faced with his negative past, and as I sat in this class, he got up and gave what was called a testimonial and basically belittled Uriel for 45 minutes. And I sat there and I didn't know what was going on. I just, sat there with wide eyes, and Uriel wasn't in the class. Well, Uriel got wind from the students that there were 2 new students, myself and a friend, who had come for the very first time to Unarius, to a class. And she made a point to tell Jennifer to tell both of us to come back the next week. She came to that class, introduced herself to us, and made sure that she knew that what we heard was not truth and that it was not right for the students to let us sit and hear that. And she gave us an orchid and just made sure that we knew that we were very loved and that she was very happy that we were new students. And I couldn't believe that somebody would do that. And it just meant so much to me. And as everyone has said, just being in her presence was just something that I'd never experienced. And what happened to me that helped prove, as Celeste talked about, shortly thereafter, I had a dream one night, and in my dream, Uriel came into my consciousness, into my dream very strongly, and she held up a scepter and just beamed me tremendously, and just light filled everywhere. And it was one of these dreams that was not a dream, it was real, but it was happening in another higher dimension and not in my normal dream state of consciousness. And I woke up and went, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. So I wrote up my description to Uriel, and she said, yes, that's true, I was beaming you. I want to make sure that you understand who and what I really am. I get it, I know who you are.
He caught us whispering in class. Passing notes. I know who she likes. So, you said you had something to read?
Yeah, you know, there's so many questions that I have for you guys, and that's one reason why we did a whole weekend this weekend, you all, because there are these really interesting facets of the Unarian belief system philosophy, but also because they were so creative in all these different media, there's a lot to cover. So I just want to say, tomorrow night we're going to be showing The Arrival, which is the Unarius 16mm masterpiece with some incredible special effects that will blow your mind. The main guide, yeah.
I actually wanted to, even to maybe help entice people, but also to clarify, because there was so much different stuff. There's the public access years.
Oh yeah, we've got that
public
too.
access. But The Arrival, did you guys start making just actual films, on film, or developing film? Can you differentiate a little bit in just the chronology of Arrival?
Well, The Arrival was happening concurrent with all the video that we were started. It took, was it 2 years?
4.
4 years. Dave Osborne, who was the main filmmaker in that, he was up in the film lab and we were up in the video lab and things were going on all weird hours of the day and night. But one of the amazing things about that film is that all of the visual effects were done in camera with like up to 40 passes where he would create mats and run it through and add this starburst, add that. And, I was a video guy. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, but I can't see it right now. But, over time, when we actually, it was completed, it was just like, just so beautiful and it's just so amazing. But we always had debates about film, video, you know how it goes.
Still today.
Still today, yeah.
But it was happening at the same time?
It was happening at the same time, like right next, we had, rooms right next door to each other. So he and David Kemas, one of the students, late into the wee hours of the night, we're doing this film, or we would go out to, the exteriors, we'd do that too, and we'd help on some of that. But the video was going on the whole time as well.
Yeah.
It's like concurrent.
So I know we still have a movie to see, so I'm wondering if maybe we should wrap it up a little bit.
Yeah, I
and
think
watch,
so.
We're going to watch The Underground Cities of Mars next, which is, it's an 8mm film. Shot, right? Correct?
Is Tom here?
Yeah. Can you guys just tell us a tiny bit about Underground Cities, and then I have a little something to read?
Technically, because it was Super 8, sound, I think you saw a whole portion there, where the sound is voiced over for the most part, because you couldn't do much in the way of sync audio, with Super 8 film. So we got around that, and you'll see why and how. And one of the earlier books was The Underground Cities of Mars, and I don't know, I just have to let it speak for itself, because it just tells the story.
Can I add that Ernest Norman channeled or was taken psychically to the planet Mars and wrote a little booklet called The Truth About Mars, but he always felt it was too short and it needed to be a more lengthy book. So after he went back to the spiritual worlds, Uriel was inspired to somehow write more about Mars. So she was, instead of just having a speaker podium and somebody giving lectures on Mars, she said, well, let's involve all the students. Let's, have some kind of video session like we're discussing. She brought in this creative aspect in conjunction with the clairvoyant ability at that time, that the two main channels, they brought in more truth about how the Martian people have incarnated or been a part of our history.
Wild, wild. I want to just read one quick thing, and then we'll take a little break, right? Or shall we go
No,
right
I
to
think
it?
we should just
Go
watch
right to it?
Underground
Okay.
Cities of Mars.
This was something that Celeste
You guys want to watch Underground Cities of Mars?
Maybe like, you can do it? Okay. I don't know if people have to like pee or anything. Okay, so Celeste gave me this newsletter, which was, you can tell it's probably Uriel's writing, maybe. It's like really interesting writing. It's the review of the first screening of The Underground Cities of Mars to the Unarius students. And this was, yeah.
Was it her review or?
Yeah, well, she kind of like wrote about the premiere. This is the premiere at the Unarius Center. It's really great. So at the top of the page it says, in all caps, Mars movie, huge success, loved by all. And then there are these lines that go above all the writing above it. 12278. Sunday, January 8th was Mars Day, exclamation point. Malvar showed to the class of about 75 the lovely film, A Visit to the Underground Cities of Mars. The preview was most enthusiastically met. The shouts, joy, and cheers upon completion and the reverberations rang through the center, echoing for several minutes' time, which truly surprised the filmmaker, Malvar. All wanted to see it rerun, but we had made other plans. In celebration, we had ordered a huge cake with the planets and stars showing on the frosting. Mars, the largest, of course. In her usual flamboyant style of going all out in her celebrations, Uriel ordered the usual several-tiered electric punch fountain.
Damn, we forgot that for the patio. Should have told me about that.
Wherein colorful fruit punch flowed down the silver tiers, and cake and ice cream was enjoyed by all. First, Uriel was presented with a huge arm spray of deep red roses, her favorite. Then she in turn presented to Malvar a lovely plaque engraved in honor of your par excellence work in both filming and editing the film Underground Martian Cities, a huge success. After the social time, the nucleus of about 20, who took more than a mere walk through part in the film, were invited to a midnight Italian dinner celebration. This was a first of its type of gathering, and all seemed to thoroughly enjoy themselves. There's more, but that's just a little taste.
Keep a round of applause going for